Get ready for a wild 8-hour session here in Dallas. We're at Poker House. We're buying to the 1-2 game for the max 500. And the first hand we look down at is Ace Queen offsuit. I want to start off with this hand because this is the type of hands that build a stack slowly over time here in Texas. And I normally cut them out of the vlog because they're not very entertaining, but I'm trying to turn this focus of the vlog into dissecting the hand and improving as a player. So we're in late position with Ace Queen offsuit. We raise up to 20. The button calls. It comes at ace high board. We see bet small. He calls, and then on the turn, we bet big around pot size to protect from a flush draw, and he folds, and we scoop a nice pot for the first hand. And this win leads straight into the first interesting hand of this session. We look down at pocket kings. There's a limp like always here in Texas. We're going to raise it up. With the $5 straddle on and the one limp, we're going to make this $30 with this premium holding. We end up getting 3 callers, the big blind, the limper, and the button who have the straddle on, going 4 ways to a flop. Normally, I default to smaller sizings in multi-way pots, but here in Texas with the premium holding, we're going to bet larger because there's going to be a lot of draws out there. So when it checks to me, we're going to bet $50. We end up getting 2 callers, and then we're going 3 ways to the turn. And it's a magical card. It's the 3 of spades. It introduces a backdoor flush draw. We don't have the king of spades here, so when the big blind checks to us, we want to go large here and target queen jack now, since we now counterfeit that 2 pair. We find a nice healthy sizing of around 60% of the pot, so we make it $180. And now here comes the fun part. The button calls and the big blind folds. So this big blind player is very aggressive. He's shown a lot of action pre-flop, and on any board texture that he thinks he's dominating, he will just blast off on. The river is perfect. It is the deuce of hearts, and now we go into the tank. How do we extract the most value from a queen or a jack holding? We've told a pretty convincing story that we have a strong hand so far, but I think if we check here, he'll put us on some sort of ace high holding like ace 10, ace king. We're going to check this to our opponent, hoping he's going to make a move on us, not thinking that we have a strong holding like we do. So we put in the check, and our opponent rips it all in, and we snap call. The moment we put in the chips, he shakes our head, but we turn over pocket kings, and he shows us ace jack offsuit, and we scoop a massive pot and double up for our first interesting hand of the vlog. Hey, if you want to join my poker journey, I'd really appreciate it. Just click the subscribe button and turn on notifications for the next vlog. If you enjoyed that pocket pair, get ready for this next one. We have the jiggities. We're on the button. There's 3 limpers, and we're going to raise it up. With the $5 straddle on, we're going to make it $35. And this is where the hand gets wild very fast. So the small blind decides to cold call our raise, and then the same player who gave us action with that ace jack hand decides to min click it back to $77. Very interesting play. I think this min click sort of reveals his hand strength, such as ace 10 suited, king queen suited, low pocket pairs, medium pocket pairs, etc. All the limpers donate $5 to the middle of the pot, and now the decision is, do we 4-bet or do we call? We're going to put in the 4-bet here for protection, especially against this action player. And we're going to make it $200 to get the small blind out of there. And that's exactly what we get. The small blind folds, but then the big blind, who 3-bet us, decides to 5-bet shove it in our face for around $480. We put in the snap call. We have pocket jacks. This guy wants action. We're going to give it back to him, obviously. We're here to play poker. I ask him how many times he wants to run it. He tells me he has a pair. I let him know I have a pair as well, and he says once. The flop comes 3-7 ace. Not looking good for us. The 6 of spades hits the turn. We have the jack of spades for the backdoor flush draw now, but the river is the 6 of hearts, and we're ready to get beat by ace king, ace queen, but he turns over something I could not believe. He has pocket 7s for 7s full of 6s. Hey man, nice hand. I'm all about the action, but we just donated all those earnings back to the opponent. What an intense and spicy vlog so far. We look down at queen 10 of hearts in the small blind. The middle position opens to 15. There's a $5 button straddle on, and we raise it up to $65. It folds around to the original raiser. He calls, and then the button decides to jam. And this is where we should be folding now. This hand's not good enough to play this out of position. The raise is around $65 more, so we put in the money, and so does the original raiser. We end up checking it all the way down to the river. We end up losing to ace jack of diamonds that hit the nut flush. Sort of embarrassing, but I want to share this and just a review for myself and put it out in the world that we make mistakes sometimes, but we can always battle back and learn from them. All right, here comes a hilarious hand. So we have Jack-Deuce of hearts on the button straddle. Under the gun decides to min raise to $10. There's 4 callers, and we complete on the button with ultimate last action. And now we're going to a flop 6 ways. The flop comes sort of favorable for us. It comes king, queen, 10. We have the jack of hearts for the open-ended straight draw. Surprisingly, everyone checks to me, and we're going to put a bet here in position with our open-ended straight draw. We're going to make it $20. This $20 $20 bet only gets called by the min raiser and everyone folds, and the turn is absolutely beautiful. It is the ace of clubs. We officially have the nuts. Our opponent checks to us, and now we're going to bet for value. We make it $70, and he calls rather quickly. And the river changes everything. It's the 4 of hearts, so the front door flush got there. And this is where the hand gets very interesting. Our opponent decides to lead into us for $150. This is a massive lead that really put us into the tank. So he's saying he has a nut flush. So what nut flushes would he have here with a limp raise preflop? So suited connectors, it seems like. So 7-8 of hearts, 7-6 of hearts, 5-6 of hearts, 3-4 of hearts, deuce 3 of hearts. Those are the only holdings he's really representing, unless he has jack 9 of hearts, which is a flop straight. And if he did have that holding, he would most likely slow play it because he has everything locked in. So we're trying to piece this story together. He feels like a recreational player who's just looking to drill a flop and not bloat a pot unless he has a made hand. This lead was very strong, but there's a possibility that he has a jack and he's trying to get us off that jack holding as well. Maybe he has ace jack with the ace of hearts and he's turning that into a bluff, trying to get us off a chop. So after a long think and not finding the fold button, because we're not good at that, we decide to put in the call because I think this line is a little mischievous. So we put in the call, and he gives us the head shake, and I think this is sort of bad sportsmanship on my part. So I'm just curious what you guys think. Should I just flip over my cards and not make him show if he was just bluffing with air? Because that's what he had. He had 7-6 of clubs and turned his backdoor flush draw into a bluff. I would love you guys' perspective on that, so please comment down below. I want to read through it and become the most cordial player I possibly can be, because I love this sport. All right, here's a quick and average hand. We have ace 5 of hearts in the small blind. There's 3 limps with the button straddle on. We make it $40 out of position. We end up getting 2 callers, going to an ace high board. We c-bet on the larger side around 2/3 of the pot, and both opponents decide to fold, and we earn around $100 of profit. All right, be prepared for a tough decision. We look down at pocket sevens in late position. There's a raise to $25 and a cold caller. We ask how much he has behind, around 200. No need to raise this hand, especially in position. We're going to set mine and put in the call. We're going 3 ways to a flop. The board comes 6-8-6, 2 clubs. Under the gun decides to continue here for $20, and under the gun 2 decides to put in the call. I'm sensing weakness, and we're going to strike at that, especially on a board that favors our calling range. We're going to have all the 6s, pocket 8s, ace 6 suited, etc. So we put in a chunky raise of $115, and this is where it gets interesting. Under the gun decides to snap call our raise, and that's not the interesting part. The person who cold called both bets, pre-flop and on the flop, decides to now jam for $250. Okay, what the hell does this mean? Regardless of how odd this feels, it's more like a monster. We thought about this for around 2 minutes. This newer player just sat down. He has a short stack. He looks conservative, clean. It looks like he doesn't want to get into a pot unless he has a made hand, and that's just my opinion. We can't read people's souls, and also our hand is kind of terrible. We have second pair. And with the speed and the snap call of the under the gun player, he's probably got us beat as well, so we put in the fold. And under the gun decides to put in the call, and we both see the opponent's hands. It's queens versus aces. This guy flatted aces twice and got the maximum from the table, so well done and well played. That's something you don't see a lot in Texas, so being able to spot those guys who play tighter and the people who play loose is the entire game, and trying to isolate those loose players is what makes it so fun here. So I suggest you guys make a trip down. It's so worth it. After around 4 or 5 hours, we move to another table. We're with Giljack Poker now, and Rosie next gen to our left, so we're hanging out with our buddies playing some poker. And we win a pot with king jack suited, and now we're looking down at ace 10 of spades. With 3 limpers and the button straddle on, we're going to make it $40. But this raise changes nothing. Everybody calls. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. The flop comes as dry as can be. Jack 4-3 rainbow. It checks to me, and we're going to check the button to see what he wants to do. We do not have a made hand, and he checks it back. The turn is the jack of diamonds, and the big blind who completed decides to bet $25, a small lead. And then middle position decides to put in the call as well, and we're going to pounce here and represent overpairs such as queens, kings, and aces, especially on this board. I doubt anyone has a jack here, especially with the small sizing and the call. So we make it $125. The button folds and the leader decides to fold, but then it gets back to the caller and he puts in the chips again. So now we're going to a river. The river is the 8 of diamonds, and when he checks to us, there's no reason for us to continue here. Ace high might still be good here, but he might have gotten his backdoor flush draw, or he might be slow playing a jack. If this river wasn't a diamond, I think we could find another barrel here to represent an overpair, but we decided to check this back, and he shows us ace 4 diamonds for the backdoor nut flush. I'm glad I didn't blast off here, because I don't know if we can get pocket 10s or pocket 9s to fold here either, because our range is pretty capped at only overpairs and maybe a jack. Not very proud of this, but I want to share it with you guys. So there's a raise to $20. There's 5 callers, so there's $105 in the center. We are under the gun with the straddle on for $5. Obviously, this is not a very good hand, but it's a great candidate to turn into a 3-bet bluff. We only have to worry about one person. I think that's the original raiser. So if we can get past him, I'm assuming everyone else will fold because their hands are very face up and weak. So we put in the 3-bet here, and we're going to go massive, especially out of position, and with so many people interested in their hand, we make it $150, and guess what happens? It folds all the way around. And you can hear Giljack say something to me.
What do you say? Bluff.
And this will lead us into, I think, what is the most interesting hand I've ever played in poker. So there's a massive raise to $50 from a late position player. Giljack is on the button with the $5 straddle, so that's ultimate last action. My thought process behind this is we just want to flat, go to a flop, and get this entire opponent stack in with this premium holding. So we're going to slow play our aces versus him. So we put in the $50, and if Giljack wants to be aggressive and raise here, we're totally okay with that. And that's exactly what he does, to our surprise. We weren't expecting it, but we knew it could possibly happen, and this is the perfect moment. Gil decides to go large. He makes it $200. We go into the tank for a very long time. Do we want to re-raise here? Do we want to main click it back? I think no, because we don't do that quite often, and that'll just scream a premium holding such as aces, and we want to conceal the strength of our hand, so we're going to put in the call here, and the small stack decides to put in the call as well with only $40 behind. That's kind of funny. I'm pretty sure he meant to go all in, but that doesn't change anything. $600 in the middle. We're going to a flop, which comes queen, 9, 6, 2 diamonds. I check to the small stack. He shoves for $40, and Gil decides to put in the call and not raise. I think this is a mandatory raise here. We don't want to keep slow playing. We don't have the ace of diamonds, so it's possible that Gil has the ace of diamonds for the flush draw. So we decided to raise here because this is how we're going to get all the money in. Compared to the pot, it's not a very big bet, but we're just going to pretend like we're opening here or continuing for 1/3 pot, so we make it $175. Gil doesn't take too long to call here, and when he does, he's pretty capped on pretty strong pairs or a flush draw. We have 2 aces, so maybe he has ace, queen of diamonds. All I know is that at this point that he must have a strong pair, and all we need to do is fade another diamond, which does not come. It's the 9 of hearts. I doubt he'll ever have a 9 here other than quads. I actually view this as a dream card because now all of his 2-pair outs are counterfeited by our overpair. So one rule I like to follow, especially in a big spot like this, is to take a couple seconds because you know what we're going to do. We're going to ship our entire stack into the center. We only have $400 left, so Gil is getting a great price to put in the chips here to possibly win this pot, thinking that we might be on a draw, and I know that he knows that, and this is the only line we could take to get the max value. The longer Gil takes to call, the more and more I know that we're going to be good here, and he does decide to put in the chips. The river comes the 7 of diamonds, not a card I want to see. We turn over our aces, and we end up scooping this entire pot versus ace, king of spades, and pocket jacks. We get a shot of Gil in misery as we just slow played aces and got max value. It feels good to finally beat this guy because he is so tough when you're playing against him on the felt. And look at our stack. It's higher than Mount Everest. I cannot believe that we just pulled off this sick slow play with aces. What a spot. On to the next hand, which is not pocket aces, but a bluff. We have 6, 7 of spades. We show Rosie to our left that we're holding these cards, and we get 1 caller. No need to show the board. It comes ace, king, deuce with a club draw. We bet small, and our opponent calls. We bet big on the turn. We make it $110, and our opponent quickly folds. He wants to see our cards, and he reaches for them, but the dealer, luckily, is fast enough and snatches it out of his hands. But the whole reason I want to share this hand is this is something that happens often. We have a hand that doesn't connect with the board, but our range does connect with it, so we decide to double barrel with a small bet and then a big bet on the turn if it's favorable for us, and we get the job done with just 7 high. And Rosie looks back at us and thinks we are psychotic, which is fair. We are a punter. Right after aces, we peel pocket kings, we raise it up, and our opponent folds pre-flop, and he says, "Let me guess your hands," and I told him I'd pay him $15 if he could, and he guessed it right. We had pocket kings, we show the table, and we give him the money. All right, this next hand is versus the pretty boy himself, Rosie from Next Gen Poker. A bunch of YouTubers that just kick ass and have inspired me a lot to become a better player. We peel pocket eights and we raise it up to $25, and we have some speech play with Rosie himself. We say, hey, if you want to raise it up, make sure you go big. And I think that speech play worked because he just puts in the flat call in position. The flop comes ace, ace, king, 2 diamonds. We're going to bet small here, heads up with Rosie. We make it 30 and he calls. The turn comes the ace of spades here. We don't need to turn our hand to a bluff because it's already great. So we're going to check to Rosie, and he decides to check back. The river is the 6 of diamonds, completing the flush draw, but that doesn't really matter because there's 3 aces on the board, and any pair negates that flush draw because aces full of 8s are better than a flush. So we have a full house. We're going to bet it. We go very, very small. We make it $25, and he ends up snap calling. Uh-oh. We turn it over, and he folds, and he told me later on text messages that he had queen high, and I just wanted a reason to put him in the vlog. Look at this guy. He's magnificent. On to the next hand. We're in early position with ace, 7 of clubs. We raise it up to $20 and get 2 callers, a late position player, and the button. The flop comes 10, 9, 7, 2 spades, and I think I should be checking this board here because it does not favor our range, but we do decide to bet because we do have bottom pair. We decide to c-bet for $35, and when both opponents call, we're going to shut down here almost on any turn card. The deuce is not that card, but we do not need to turn our hand to a bluff because it does have showdown value. So we check, and it checks all the way around, and we're going to see a river, which is the jack of hearts. So any 8 makes a straight. We only have 4th pair, so we're going to put in the check, and it gets to the button player, and he decides to put in a bet of $50. This might seem like a snap fold to you guys, especially with the other player in the hand. There is a flush draw on the board, and I think our pair might be good against something that missed, especially like king, queen, ace 5. So we're going to put in the call here, which I think is very loose, especially because there's another player in the pot. So we put in the chips, and the other player decides to think now, uh-oh, do we just give away $50 for free? But he does put in the fold, and we show our ace 7, and the other opponent shows a deuce. Deuce 3 of spades. We beat that. And the opponent, who was in late position, told us he folded 2 pair. That was Jack 9. How surprising is that? I think I'm turning into one of the local Texan players now. I don't know if I'm proud of this or if I'm embarrassed, but we're just going to show it because it was kind of cool. We looked down at pocket 10s. There's a straddle on the button, so we're going to go bigger as always. We make it $25. And then we get min raised by the button player to $50. A min raise. This player was rather new to the game and recreational, so I should have just put in the call here, but we decide to interpret this min raise as weakness, and we're going to 4-bet it. We're going to make it $200. And he calls rather quickly, which is very unpleasant for me right now. With $400 in the middle, the flop comes queen 5 deuce. Very dry. We don't need to go big here if you missed. There's no reason to bloat the pot. So we're going to go for a quarter-sized bet of $110, and he calls very quickly. So our c-bet did not accomplish its job, which is just fold out any hands that missed. So when he does put in this call, I'm putting him on a queen holding or possibly an overpair. The turn is the 9 of diamonds, introducing a backdoor flush draw. So we're going to put in the check here because we only have 2nd pair, and our opponent decides to snap jam all in for $550. I don't want to insta-muck here, but it feels like a spot I should be insta-mucking, correct? So after a lot of time thinking and observing my opponent, he looks nervous, he looks like he's uncomfortable, and it feels like a bluff. But in reality, this normally is not a bluff, and our hand is not that strong. He could be thinking he's bluffing with king, queen suited, thinking that we have pocket kings or pocket aces. So the last thing I want to do is overanalyze this guy and pay him off all of these profits just because I want a hero call and not fold. As much as my pride is telling me to call this, I think my gut is right, and this is a fold spot. So we decided to put in the fold, and he later told me he had pocket jacks. Imagine I put in that call, and he flips over pocket jacks, and we only have 2 more outs to the deck to even win. And we're going to battle with the same opponent again in this next hand. He raises to $15. We're out of position on the small blind with ace, king of clubs. We're going to raise it up big here, especially out of position. We're going to make it $65, and the same opponent snap calls. Okay, we're going heads up to a flop. The flop comes Jack 10-8 rainbow, and notice what our opponent does. He checks out of position. I'm not really sure if this is a tell or just a simple and honest mistake. So since we only have a gutter, a backdoor flush draw, and 2 overs, I think we're going to bet on the larger side. Even though this is better for his calling range, he is a recreational player, and we could just pretend that we have really strong cards, such as aces or kings. So we decide to bet $80, and our opponent puts in the call very fast. The turn comes the 10 of hearts, and this is a card that's better for our opponent, but in the moment, we do not decide to think of that. We decide to lean towards aggression. Due to his checking out of position, we find a very big sizing that's over the pot. We make it $325, and the moment we slide this bet in, he sits back in his seat and he's very uncomfortable. After a minute or so, he asks me if he could see if he folds, and I tell him, sure, whatever you want, man. So he agrees and folds, so we win the pot, and we slide the cards over to him, and he flips them over for the whole table to see the ace high bluff, and he told us later that he had king jack for top pair. So now we're going to rack up our chips and go to the cage and see how much money we made on today's session. Before I show you guys how much we made, if you guys want to join our poker Discord community, it's called RAZE. We're doing a giveaway on there for some free chips on the Cheddar Club. All the links are in the description. It's a great community where we're always sharing hand history, doing study groups, and giving away free chips to play on the club. If you're interested in joining, make sure you click the link in the bio. And now we're going to the cage. We've officially made $1,215 on the day. Thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe. I'll see you later.